What's up, guys? This is your host, Gavin J Gallagher, and you are listening to episode 15 of Behind the Facade, where I explore the mental and emotional game playing out subconsciously in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate and property market. So, guys, welcome. It is Friday the 7th of August, and I just wanted to start out the beginning of this podcast with a quick, extension of my sympathy and thoughts to the people of Beirut. I was watching the news this week and I saw that incredible explosion that took place in the docks in Beirut, and it's just mind-blowing, the power of that explosion, and there's a lot of people hurt, missing and injured. So just my thoughts out to begin with. I'm here in the East Point office and it's Friday evening, and I'm kind of packing up. I'm actually going to be taking next week off, and my wife is expecting, so there's a few things that I have to do back home. But don't worry, the episodes are going to continue, and so you don't need to worry about missing out while I'm off. So last week's episode was my very first interview on the podcast. It was with Mr. Jerry Tate, architect from London, and I'm very curious to know, what did you guys think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you want more of those kind of episodes? It would be useful to know. So if you have the time, please just drop me a note and let me know what you thought, if there's any ways I can improve, because I'm looking all the time, I'm looking for ways to try to improve this podcast. This week I'm playing another interview back to you, and this time it is with Mr. Chungha Cha. Now, before I get into an introduction to Chungha, a couple of housekeeping, my usual updates. Last week I mentioned my burpee challenge that I have started. So to those of you who haven't heard it yet, I've taken on a challenge, personal challenge, stretch goal you might say, and it's to do 10,000 burpees in the month of August. For charity. And that, just to those of you who want to quickly work it out, that is an average of 325 burpees per day for 31 consecutive days. So I am now at day 7, and that is 2,550 burpees done. So I'm slightly ahead of schedule. And if you guys want to track my progress on this, or if you want to participate, or if you want to donate, then please check out my website, gavinjgallagher.com/challenge. And there'll be a couple of links there to the apps that I'm tracking my progress on, and to the GoFundMe page where you can donate if you are so willing. Getting into the second update is just the Facebook group Behind the Facade community. You guys are probably well aware of it now at this stage if you're listening for a while. It's currently at 186 members, and this is the area where I interact with the listeners. So if you guys are interested in participating in the Q&A sessions that I do live on Facebook, or if you want to just participate in general on the show, then that would be the best place to reach out to me. Obviously, you'll find me in the usual spots like LinkedIn and things like that. So look, without further ado, I'm going to get into the main part of the show, the interview with Mr. Chungha Cha. So I'm thrilled to be able to bring you this episode. It is a conversation with Mr. Chungha Cha, who is a world-renowned expert on smart cities and sustainability. I just want to preface this, though, first of all, by saying that this is my first ever interview for the podcast. You heard me talking to Jerry Tate last week, but that wasn't my first interview. This interview you're about to hear today, I recorded back in February. And it was before COVID-19 had hit us all, and I'd only just thought about starting a podcast. And so I hadn't worked out the format. And you'll see from listening to me that I'm a bit stiff sounding, and I haven't quite gotten into the hang of it yet. So pardon for that. And you'll also find the interview is a very wide-ranging and quite drawn out. And I actually, believe it or not, I've cut 30 minutes from the recording when I was editing this, just to make it a little bit more to the point. So we're going to be covering sustainability, smart cities, and prop tech today. I also just want to apologize about some of the poor audio. Due to the time difference between Korea and Ireland, Chungha was a full 8 hours ahead of me, and I was actually winding down at home for the evening when we spoke. So you'll hear a couple of clangs from the wine glass and in the background, and there's a little bit of audio issues that, obviously as you get more experience with podcasting, you start to figure these things out. Anyway, just the other thing I wanted to kind of mention was just some of the experience that Chungha has. This is a very, very special episode. Chungha is the co-founder of the Reimagining Cities Foundation, and he has a super impressive resume. He attended the Wharton School of Economics in the US, and he did an MBA at Columbia Business School. And then he worked in Citibank for a couple of years before becoming the managing director and a board member at the Asian Banking Corporation. And then this was followed by a stint as the CEO of Lone Star Korea. And he's also been the vice chairman of the Korean Green Building Council. So for those of you who are starting out at the beginning of your careers, some of the stuff that we're talking about here today might seem a little bit irrelevant to where you're at. This interview today, this discussion, is more of a fly-on-the-wall type overview of some of the issues facing very senior real estate executives across the world. So while it may not seem relevant to the position that you're in, I can guarantee this is super important stuff. And what happens at the big companies and corporations trickles down to the smaller companies. So what you're hearing today is stuff that is going to be relevant to you in a couple of years' time. So pay attention and take out your notes, because there's a ton of value in this episode. So without further ado, guys, Mr. Chungha Cha. Welcome, Chungha. I just thought I would start off the conversation with a very brief introduction. You're the chairman of the Sustainable Cities, is that correct?
Yes, we call ourselves Reimagining Cities.
And you're based in Seoul, Korea?
Yes, we are.
But you work all over the world, I understand.
Yes, I would really love to work here in Korea, but frankly speaking, I think on the smart city space, Korea is lagging a little bit behind.
That's interesting. I would have thought, I would have thought the opposite, yeah.
I think Korea is very good with heavy industry, producing the tech. But I think when it comes to solutions, the software, the soft side of smart cities,
right.
I think Korea needs a lot to learn. We're very top-down heavy.
Yeah.
And of course, you know that smart cities, it's more, they're trying to get to the people-centric type of smart cities where it's more of a bottom-up approach, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we've kind of not good at.
Right, okay. Well, it's funny because I saw one of your photographs on the WhatsApp group, and it's all of your conference badges. I think you've described.
Yes.
You are, I don't think I've ever seen so many in my life, and it kind of gave me the impression the word conference junkie certainly applies to you. So the fact that you've been around the world, and I mean, it looks like you've been to hundreds of these conferences. Is there any cities that stand out as particularly advanced in the smart cities and in the green? I mean, obviously Copenhagen comes to mind. I was just curious from your perception where the kind of the trends are being established and who's the leading cities out there.
Right. Well, in answer to your question, first, I think everyone has a slightly different understanding of or definition of what a smart city is. We kind of look at it along number one, does it have a vision? 2, 3, and 4, we look at smart city has to be a sustainable city, and sustainability we define it as people, planet, profit. Right. It has to be for the people, social sustainability, planet meaning environmental sustainability or low impact to the environment. And then, of course, smart city needs to be a driver for economic growth. I love Copenhagen for many reasons, but they stand out clearly because they have a vision toward becoming a carbon neutral city by 2025.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Many cities, many countries, they throw it out to 2050, 2040. But Copenhagen, 2025 is like almost day after tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
It's only 5 years from now. And they've made significant progress toward achieving those goals. Now, whether they become carbon neutral by 2025 or not, I don't think that's very important. It's that everyone is so engaged to get there, right?
Enthusiastic. Yeah.
Yes, and in the process, they're creating new businesses. They're creating ecosystems for clean energy, smart grid, or using renewable energy, just changing behavior of people, energy efficiency. Less. It's. I love Copenhagen for many, many reasons. The other cities, I think there are a lot of cities that are on this journey, and so
Which ones stand to mind?
I think Singapore does a pretty good job in engaging their people. I don't like their planet piece, meaning their buildings are not that energy efficient.
Right.
I like Amsterdam. I think London is doing a lot. New York is doing a lot in terms of trying to use data, and then they're changing their streetscapes to get rid of cars and make it huge sidewalks so people can enjoy sitting outside on the streets. So they're
Well, I've
doing.
seen in London. I was at the Bloomberg, the new headquarters that he built. It's now, I think it scored 98.5, whereas the Edge was 98.36 or something like that.
Yeah.
And won't be long before it's passed again, and somebody gets to 98.6 or something like that.
Oddly enough, I'm so passionate about smart cities and green buildings or very energy efficient buildings. I don't like the certification systems.
Right.
Like BREEAM or LEED, or I think they're just if you want to have a great building, go to carbon neutrality and make it very healthy.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only thing is it's and I totally agree with you on the certification, because sometimes it seems to me to be a bit of it's guys using other people's desire to do this to kind of leverage a profit out of it, because it's expensive to get this certification, and it's the same with the wellness certification. I understand that it's quite an expensive process to actually become a wellness building. How often do you go to conferences per year, would you say?
I like to speak at maybe 5 to 10 conferences a year, and I probably wind up going to 15, sometimes 20.
Yeah.
And most of them are not here in Korea. I go to like 1 or 2 here in Korea. But I think when I looked at all these badges and I said, oh my God, that's a lot of money.
It is. That's an investment, yeah.
So I said, maybe I'll go a little bit less and focus on 2 mega projects that I'm working on. One is Lakeview Village.
Okay, I've heard of this. Yeah, I've heard you speak about this before. This is different to the Sidewalk Labs project.
Yes.
Just as ambitious, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I've been working with them as a smart city advisor for about a year now. And in the beginning, they didn't really understand it. But now, over time, as they're on our WhatsApp group chat and they see a lot of links and they kind of read up on it. And now they're really engaging and they're saying, they're starting to get it, right? So it's very exciting. And now they've invited me to go for about a week, almost 10 days at the end of the month to spend time with them. And inviting me to like meetings with the city and the smart city. They have a smart city master plan.
Okay.
And attend meetings. They have a town hall meeting where they're going to invite the community, and they're going to be explaining certain aspects of this development, because they just got their master plan approved in November last year. So 2 months ago. Yeah, so that means they're going to start building first phase end of this year or early next year. So it's going to start moving pretty fast.
Yeah, it looks ambitious. I mean, that's a big, what is it, 150 acres or something?
Wow, good eye. 177 acres.
Wow, yeah, it does. It looks like and I like the fact that it's got the kind of the waterfront there. Yeah, it looks very nice. That'll be a nice project. One of the issues that I find is that building a new project is great, and the economics a lot of the time stack up. But as I've explained to you, we have an existing business park here where
Yes.
we have buildings that are approaching 20 years in some cases, and when you're into that situation, the economics are quite different, and actually converting it to carbon neutral is almost impossible to achieve when you're at this kind of age, economically speaking. I mean, the economics are not there to do it. Our tenants, they can do that, but in order to achieve that, they bought the building and then they spent so much money on it that could never be recovered from an economic standpoint. You would not rent the building at a level that would ever repay that investment. However, from their point of view, it's their own building. It's an investment that they can kind of stand over because it ticks a lot of boxes for them. But as a developer looking at it, there's just no return on the quantum that they spent. So it makes it kind of difficult for us. And I wonder, have you come across this problem in your capacity as an advisor to different developers around the world? And what is your advice?
Well, the common perception that going sustainable is not profitable or it's too expensive. It's very, very commonplace. And when I ask, well, what did they do and how much did they spend? They don't know.
I get you there.
And so what I encourage investors or portfolio owners is just to start calculating, like I asked you to do, right?
Yeah.
Manually. Let's get the old Excel spreadsheet out. It's a little cumbersome, but until you understand the kind of metrics that we want to manage, then if you think that it's worth managing, then you have to measure it, right?
What gets measured gets improved.
Yes. Well, good old Peter Drucker, famous professor at MIT. If you want to manage it, you have to measure it. And if you don't measure it, it does not get managed, period. So that's so even with the Lakeview guys, I said, hey, if you want to do this like smart city development, we got to think about what are the metrics and what do we want to measure. In your case, you have an existing, large portfolio of real estate. If you want to manage savings through energy, how much energy are you spending now? Right? And let's try to get as granular as we can without spending any money on fancy bells and whistles and sensors. If your, energy supply just goes into these buildings and you cannot even segregate by building, then maybe I would suggest, hey, why don't you invest in a meter so that you can just meter at each building level. You don't even have to go very, very granular to every floor.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is, it's the first step in the process, I guess, is to start measuring those kind of metrics. That's in terms of energy usage. And then obviously when your energy usage is a certain level, then you know that your fabric is obviously of a certain quality in order to require that much energy to heat it or to cool it.
So you guys work in euros, yes?
Yes.
Is that your currency? Okay, let's say we can save 50,000 euros per building per year. Now that's very small money, right? It's not even worth the attention of an executive like you or many executives out there. So when you have a portfolio of buildings, and let's just assume we save 50,000 euro, multiply that across 100 buildings in your portfolio. And that's 5 million euro per year savings. But it's savings, but it's also increase in net operating income. So cap that at a net operating income at a 5% yield.
And it starts to add up.
Well, you just increase the valuation of your portfolio, 5 million euro divided by 0.05. You just increase the valuation of your portfolio by 100 million euro. That's what the objectives should be. And in the process, you have just made your buildings a little more environmental friendly because we're driving down energy and we're driving down greenhouse gases. That should be the objective.
Yeah.
Right? Let's make money. That's what we want to do. But if we can incorporate that together with the sustainability objective of driving down energy, now that's a nice win-win.
This is where your point, people, planet, and profit comes into it.
Yes. And with existing portfolios, you have the luxury of, almost 50 buildings right there. Let's do the math. And yeah, I don't know if you can save 50,000 euros per building. Maybe it's only 20,000 euros per year per building. But we won't know until we start putting those energy bills that you paid. Let's go back 1 year to 2 years and have one of your analysts start putting in those figures into an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. What about IoT devices and the kind of stuff that you're seeing used in the cities and stuff? Well, as an example, I know that I spoke to my friends in Oracle last week, and their new building that I mentioned is completely interconnected. The BIM is connected to all of their IoT devices, and it's their lighting and there's sensors everywhere. Yeah. And in their toilet, just as a very small example, they have a toilets that and the lights above each cubicle turn on every time they're in use. And they discovered that one of the cubicles in their toilets was never getting used. From morning to night, nobody ever went into it. And yet they were sending a cleaner in 3 times a day to clean that toilet. And so they realized that they could actually redeploy that cleaner, efforts elsewhere. So there's a saving there, but there's also, there's less chemicals being used, and there's less kind of time being spent. So they've estimated, I think, that the building is now saving them 85,000 a year or something like that from just IoT devices that they've kind of installed. That's a small example of just some of the benefits. And I know that, the Smart Dublin Docklands area, they're sensing the air quality and the rain, the amount of rain they're going to try to harvest the rain so as to make use of all of these, make it as sustainable as possible, but also the health and welfare of the people who live in the city is very important.
Well, for us in our this project that we're having in Toronto, of course, having sensors inside the building, we like the edge technologies approach, where they've used
this is Koen van Oostrom's company, formerly OVG, isn't it, or OGV?
Yes, correct. OVG Real Estate became Edge Technologies. And in many of their buildings, what they're doing, they put lighting over Ethernet.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So in their ceilings, they don't use copper wire, so you don't have to buy any copper wire in your bill of materials. They buy Ethernet cables, which you need for internet connections. And their whole ceiling, they use low voltage lighting over Ethernet. So now your whole ceiling becomes a sensory network, right? So you have the cabling there, and you have portals at each light fixture. They have a little port where you can stick in a sensor.
Right.
And it measures temperature, humidity, CO2 levels. They can even put photo sensors. So if there's movement, then they would shut the light off or dim the lights. But if you look at the CO2, I think the CO2 might not be in the ceiling, it's in the wall, because CO2 is a little bit heavier than air.
Right.
So there are studies by Harvard saying, hey, if there is a high level of CO2, X ppm exceeding 300 ppms or something, parts per million, then human beings start to get tired.
Yeah,
and
lethargic.
They've done a study where if you sit in a room with a higher CO2, your response time or your cognitive test is poor or less than a clean air room.
So it affects high performance, yeah.
Right, right. So that's pretty cool. And then the temperature and humidity, that's all about comfort. That's all about health and well-being. So those kind of sensors I find quite important. And also you kind of market to your tenants, people who work and visit there, saying, hey, we are monitoring these conditions so that you have a very healthy environment, right?
Can you, I haven't, I've looked at some of their work before, and it looks really interesting to me. One of the issues that I've tried to kind of come to terms with is the sharing of the data, because if I go and fit out a building and then a tenant comes along, is it difficult to convince the tenant to continue sharing all of that internal data with you? Is that a conversation that that you know anything about?
No, I don't know about that. I think that would be taken care of in the lease. For example, I have a net zero energy house in Boston, 2-family house. Very, I just bought it and renovated into a net zero energy house.
Right.
I just want to feel what it was like, and it's really not that difficult, right?
Net zero energy.
Yes, and the same principles go to any building, right? The process of analysis, and for me, we did that. So the downstairs unit my daughter lives in, the upstairs unit I rent out. So in the rent agreement, I explained to them I am monitoring the energy usage of both units, and I monitor how much solar energy is being produced for your unit, and I understand how much you're using for lighting, for air conditioning, for heating. I have that data. So by signing this lease, you are authorizing me access to that data.
Okay.
And if you want access to the data, you're more than welcome. Here's the password. This is the tool that we're using.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see if you built it into the lease how that would work. All right. And it's for their benefit, ultimately.
Right.
I mean, in the case of Edge, do they actually manage the space on behalf of the tenant in terms of those, CO2 levels and lighting and heating and all that?
Well, when I went to Amsterdam, they have their new Edge 2.0 building, right? The Edge Olympic, which is
Olympic. I've heard of it.
just a few blocks away from their original Edge that they, I think, sold to Deloitte, or Deloitte is. Anyway, it appears that they are just owning and managing the whole property. Now, they do have a sub out some parts of it where they have a co-working space.
Right.
And I think they have a co-working company to manage what goes on there. But again, the ceilings, sensory network, that data is being collected by Edge, right?
That to me, it seems very interesting. Obviously, OVG were already quite a big developer prior to getting involved in this, so they, I guess they
not that big.
Were they not?
Yeah, from my understanding, it weren't that big.
Okay.
They got big, right? Now, I spoke to the CTO, Eric Ubels.
Yeah.
And he was walking me around the building in Edge to Olympic building. And of course, to the common eye, you don't know really what's going on in that building. And we were walking around, and he was pointing out things. So he was explaining to me the ceiling, and he's got all these ideas for, the next generation ceiling that he's making. So he says, Cha, I can make this building at the same price that the regular developer is building their stupid buildings.
Really? Same price?
So he says, look at the architect. He goes in and he has 30,000 options to choose from this database of building materials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He goes, I define 30 crucial design parameters for them. So ceiling, you're going to put in this ceiling. the ceiling manufacturer, they have several suppliers, and they supply all of their buildings.
Right.
Now, the look and feel might be slightly different, but the essential sensory network is in there. So the more they buy, the cheaper it goes down. And then he goes, the elevators, I buy not just 10, I buy 50 or 100 because we've specified the exact size of this elevator for all of our buildings. Now, there might be some exceptions, but anyway.
So they're building an economy of scale.
Right, he's thinking, right? And he's starting to get it into a system there, right? So why recreate something that's working pretty well?
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think so. I think, and you know, the first Edge building is a net zero energy building.
Yeah.
And they sold it at a profit, right?
Yeah, that's what's interesting. All right. Yeah.
So they made money on it. Now, did they make, the IRR that real estate investors are supposed to be making? Well, then I asked the real estate investor. I used to work for Lone Star Real Estate Fund.
Right.
Okay, I was CEO for Lone Star Real Estate Fund in Korea. Do we make our target IRR in all of our investments? Obviously not.
Yeah.
But on some, we make a lot more than we did underwrite. I don't think we ever lost any money on every deal that we did. We didn't lose any money. Like VCs, they lose money on some of their investments, and that's okay. For Lone Star, we had to make money on every investment.
Yeah.
But going back to trying to do it smart and green and very near carbon neutral or near net zero, you can find that sweet spot where it is within
the inflection point.
The attractive investment return. You can get it within that range.
And that's actually something that I've noticed lately, is that a lot more people in the investment community are starting to realize that this is key, kind of in terms of investment. I mean, sustainability has got to the point now where if you're looking at developing a building, if it's not sustainable, the likelihood is you're not going to find a tenant for it when it's built. And I was looking at Jim Cramer, you know, the stock analyst who's on MSNBC quite a bit. He's a colorful character, well known on the TV. And he was asked a question about, you know, the latest stock picks and things like that. And he was saying that he's done with fossil fuels. And he was mentioning, you know, BP and Exxon and all of these oil companies. They have all started to see that they're being divested by the major investors in the world, because they're now the managers of these big portfolios are young millennials who kind of are starting to realize that in a couple of years' time, these investments are just not going to be palatable anymore. And so that's a real changing point. I've noticed that this conversation is becoming more and more common, you know?
Yeah, and I hope it's going to get painful for the big business leaders who are not listening.
Yeah.
I hope it gets super, super painful, meaning losing their jobs at the CEO, whole slew of their executives get fired, companies going bankrupt, you know, who fail to,
adapt.
change adapt.
It's funny, it's actually something. It's because the way I've seen it is, you know, technology has come along and has disrupted business, and now I see actually sustainability coming along and disrupting in a similar way. I mean, if you look at Kodak and Blockbuster, those are two companies that were massive leaders in their field. Both of them went bankrupt because along came the likes of the Instagram, you know, digital photos, and then along came Netflix, you know. And nowadays we're looking at these huge big companies, like whether the oil companies or whether the big real estate guys that aren't making these investments. And I can actually see it being at some point in the future where they have a huge portfolio of dinosaurs, you know, buildings that nobody wants to rent. and the investment is too huge. The investment they have to make is too big that they actually fail, or that they get booted out for not taking this more seriously at an earlier date.
I totally agree, because climate action is starting to translate into legislation, and that's the important thing. So Washington, D.C. Enacted laws to say that Washington, D.C. will be 100% renewable energy for all electricity by 2032.
Wow.
Now that has impacted the real estate owners, saying, oh my God, we have to reduce the use of our electricity in our buildings. New York City enacted the, I think it's called Climate Mobilization Act, saying that buildings above, I think, 5,000 square feet need to achieve a certain level of energy efficiency. They're estimating it will cost 8 to 10 billion euros to the existing real estate owners to comply.
Wow.
Right? So this is just the beginning. And people like me, we advocate to policymakers to make it even more severe. So I'm the bad guy and the good guy in one. We're trying to help the real estate industry to be more sustainable. But at the same time, we're working with the government people to say, hey, we can do this. More stringent requirements.
I think what's going to actually happen is that the climate change that we're all trying to prevent is actually going to start happening in a severe way. And suddenly people, like the governments that are paying lip service to this, are suddenly going to wake up and realize that they're going to be out of a job, first of all, if they're not seen to be taking action. But the action that they're going to have to take is going to be very painful. It's going to involve, taxes having to increase. It's going to involve all sorts of unpalatable things that they just don't want to. It's the nettle that they don't want to grasp at the moment. But I think at some point in the future, there's going to be a point of no return, where suddenly you're going to the likes of landlords and building owners and saying, I'm sorry, you have no choice, but you have to do this. And suddenly the guy's going to be on the back foot thinking, we can't afford that. And well, sorry, that's what you have to do. And whether you can afford it or not, you can go bankrupt if you can't afford it.
Right. Well, there are other cities or countries in Europe. You cannot lease your property unless it achieves a certain energy efficiency, right?
Right. Okay.
So now you're going to wind up with a building. If you have, an energy hog, you're not going to be able to sign a lease. Yeah. So meaning you have to dig into your pocket and rip out those chillers or boilers. And if you don't touch the fabric or the envelope or change the windows, you're gonna face the same problem.
And I think the same is going to apply in terms of the tenants themselves. You're going to have state-run businesses that are not permitted to sign a lease unless a certain level of energy efficiency has been achieved as well.
But personally, Gavin, I think there's that scare of potential threats. The brown discounts is going to impact your values negatively and stuff. A bunch of things related to that. But I focus more on the positive things as to how can you make your projects more sustainable so that you can attract better. No, I don't think it's about the feel good. I'm strictly about the money. Right?
Well, there's an element of legacy to it, I would have thought.
No, I don't have legacy. I don't want to hug a tree, although I love nature and I love sustainability. But the case in hand here is it's all about money. And so how can we help developers make more money, reduce risks, so that their risk-adjusted investment returns are either equal or better, right? Yeah. And all I'm saying is let's calculate it before you write a check. If you don't want to calculate it, then I just consider you stupid. Yeah. And I do hope you go bankrupt, Because if you don't want to, just open your mind to say, hey, maybe I could do some good in the world and I still make the money that I'm after. Wow,
bonus.
But they have no vision for how can we build a better world and also make money at it.
Yeah.
There's so much more people with that kind of vision in Europe, or my clients in Lakeview Village, Singapore, the ASEAN countries. They're even better than some that I see in Korea. I'm very disappointed in Koreans.
Are you live there in Seoul, do you?
Yeah, I live in Seoul for 26 years now.
Okay. Well, you mentioned you have a property in Boston, so I thought maybe you were. That's your.
No, that was just for my daughter. I was sick of paying the rent,
Yeah, been there.
So I said, hey, why don't we buy something, at least build value? And then I bought a 100-year-old stick frame house.
Wow.
And then I said, oh, let's renovate it. It was a lot of fun and some experience building, get to meet the experts in the field, what they propose or suggest. So it was a nice learning experience as well.
Yeah. It's a good case study as well, just for your own experience. I'm starting a project in the next 2 weeks in one of our buildings, and we're completely refurbishing one of the floors after the tenant has vacated after 20 years of occupation. And
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's a complete refurb. It's completely tear out everything and start again. So
you're gonna completely refurb, just scrape out everything slab to slab?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's we may be able to retain the floor, because the floor, there's not a great deal of change in the raised access floors, but in terms of all of the M&E, all of that is changing, and we kind of feel like if we don't make the investment, then you're going to be in this kind of stasis situation where people are just not interested in renting your building. So it's it is.
Are you going to change the windows?
That's something that we're not doing, actually. It's something that we probably should, but the problem is we have it's one of a floor. It's one floor out of 4 floors, and if we were to change just that floor, it wouldn't work very well. We'd have to do all of the other floors, and it would be quite disruptive to the existing tenants. So that is an element of it that's proving to be quite challenging.
Well, are those operable windows?
You mean, do they automatically open and close and stuff?
Or, well, can you open and close the windows, or
yes.
Are they just?
They are. It's a curtain wall, and I think it does have openable sections.
Because there are some solutions where you don't touch the exterior, and for the window openings, you just put a second window.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
And you try to improve the tightness of the envelope, and where the window is, because you have 2 windows, the air in between the 2 windows acts as some insulation. So right. It does help, keep you a little warmer in the winter without spending too much oil or gas.
Yeah. I've seen those double skin kind of solutions out there, but
not double skin facades. This is just in the window area.
Oh, okay, it's actually just applied to the glass itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's maybe 1 inch or 2, or 3 to 5 centimeters of space go toward the inside, and they right. put in this glass.
Sealed. Yeah.
If it's operable, it can be an operable window on the inside. Right. But anyway, those are some solution, and shouldn't be all that expensive. But again, if you measure how much money we're dealing with, how much energy, then you'll know whether it's worth it or not.
Yeah.
You can calculate the investment return on that additional investment that you might consider. And if you're not, at least calculating that, You're just taking which way is the wind blowing? I just
whether the investment paid off or anything.
Collecting the data for energy efficiency, health and well-being, and space optimization. Those are the three areas that if we had data on, I think we can help drive down our expenses or increase our income.
In terms of space optimization, what are some of the solutions that you're talking about? Is it the covering the space between buildings? Is that one of those?
No, there's a bunch of prop tech solutions. Vauta Trofino turned me on to some. We've discovered some on our own.
Are you talking about sensors inside the building to space usage and stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
So what they have is most of them have let's take basking or lone rooftop, Octo, Space City. These are prop tech solutions.
City, yeah, I've used those, yeah.
So they're discovering one use case I saw some details on was Colliers. They did 5 or 6 of their buildings, and they discovered that at any peak of the day, they're only using like 75% of the space that they're leasing. So they're either out in meetings. So you can hire 10% more of your staff without leasing more space.
Yeah, that's down to agile workplace policies and things like that.
Right. Or you can give back space. And in this case, they said, we're not using 25%. Let's give back 10%. And they saved almost 4 million euros. So 4 million euros, cap it at a 5%. That's 80 million euros increase in corporate value if the corporate value had a 5% cap.
I get you. Yeah.
Not bad.
No, it's good. It's funny you say that. I've seen that in our own park here. One of our tenants here in the park approached me and they asked if I could get them more space. And so I started to drill into the detail, how much space. 45 desks. They wanted to hire 45 more people for their team. And so I started to ask questions. I started to say to them things like, okay, well, how many staff do you have at the moment? And how, frequently are they in the office? And these kind of questions that you're talking about. And it turned out that they have a policy where 50% of their staff can work from home at any time during the week. So I think they have 180 staff currently, and up to 90 of those staff at any one time could be out of the office working from home. So that's 90 desks sitting empty. And yet they have a policy that every member of staff is entitled to their own personal desk. And so they're looking to hire another 45 desks, even though most of the time 90 desks are sitting empty in the building. And it means it's crazy, it's expensive, it makes no sense in terms of space utilization, but it's a kind of policy. And funnily enough, this is a technology company, but they're developing pieces of technology. They're not actually applying the innovation to their own workplace.
Well, I think some of these tools are good for client retention.
That's true.
And client attracting clients. And net, what it boils down to, and the edge buildings, they do that, is part of the office space that you have, you're having a kind of a co-working flex space.
You're right.
So that when some of these companies, they're maxed out, but they have a special project and they have to bring in 10, 15 people, right, to work on this project for 6 months.
Right.
So then they can rent out part of this co-working space. And obviously co-working is working because when you rent out per person, it's more profitable than if you're renting out per square meter. So, that's another way that you can enhance your revenues per square meter of space that you own.
Right. Okay, I get you. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I like it's actually a solution that I've considered myself, is that if you take an existing building, it's a similar solution to what you're talking about. You take up, say, 20% of your floor area and allocate that over to either co-working space or a kind of, and that way you can offer your tenants in the higher floors that exact thing where you can say to them, look, if you need overspill, or if you need meeting rooms, or if you need that kind of thing, you don't have to allocate that to your own space. You can share it, and you can just pay on an hourly basis or whatever.
At the edge, they want to make it cool place, but on their first floor, you walk in, and it's not a typical office building lobby. It's a coffee shop. And the people who are the office lobby policemen or the receptionists, they're just hanging out on the side. So if you have a badge and they know you, they let you in, don't bother. If you're a foreigner like me, they step up and say, how can we help you? And then they have their little iPads and they register, and boom, you're done, right?
Okay. So can you walk in off the street as a member of the public and just sit down at their coffee table? No. Okay.
If you have an event and you're registered for the event, that's what you first walk into. You continue into the first floor, and it's heavily plants, beautiful. Yeah. And then in one area, they have the stadium seating.
Bleacher seats, kind of,
Yes. But it's really cool, so that when you have an event, they have screen on the first floor. People can be sitting up there and looking down and participating in the seminar or workshop or whatever it may be. So they have some pretty cool event spaces or presentation spaces for tenants as well as outdoor people.
I like the idea of the seminar, so you can host kind of after work kind of sessions, and the idea of bringing in an entrepreneur to talk about his journey, or one of those can be quite interesting talks to join in.
And you have a community manager who's always working on that kind of software content piece. She understands, or he understands, who are your tenants. You're always talking to them. What are they working on? Hey, that sounds interesting. Would you like them to come here and speak? And we'll bring in our ecosystem of investors to listen in on them.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's how the whole thing should work, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. And that's, converting your business park, where this is my office, you drive, go into your office, work, get in your car, leave.
Yeah.
There's no interaction or where you call a innovation district. So I think maybe one evolution of your business park could start getting into the innovation lab, urban innovation lab, or urban innovation district, and kind of connect with the city's overall smart city master plan.
It does make a lot of sense because it's something that I looked at. Actually, if you combine that with a university, a research university, you can really see some good results then, because they start to apply the commercialization of the PhDs and the research.
You are right on. So when I go in end of February, I complained to the architect and the owner. I said, hey, this looks like a business park. You drive in, go to the back, park your car. There's no interaction. I think we need to have connectivity.
Yeah.
And then I'm having to develop a public-private academia partnership. I created these slides. I told Lakeview I want to share this with universities and anchor tenants, potential anchor tenants.
I think that's great.
Yeah. So
it's something that actually I believe one of the criticisms I've heard of Sidewalk Labs is that they're not particularly into sharing the information and the data. They're quite protective of all of that information, and also privacy kind of has raised its head, I believe.
Yeah, for me, privacy, data sharing, cybersecurity. I say Can we put that aside for a moment and let's discuss what are we trying to achieve? The risks of data privacy and cybersecurity will always be there. It's like a knife. Are you going to use it to cut your steak, or are you going to use it as a weapon?
It's either a tool or a weapon, yeah.
So let's put that, there are experts there. And if you have any suggestions as to how to address privacy, cybersecurity, let's talk about it. Let's get the experts in the room to develop a structure where it's palatable to the public, the private, academia, and the citizens, right? I think my basic thing was, there are a lot of solutions out there. Smart city solutions, smart parking, smart street lights, smart healthcare, smart energy, so many solutions. And then even on the prop tech for inside the buildings, a lot of solutions for energy efficiency and health and well-being. And what I wanted to say was, let's think about solutions versus the platform, right?
Yeah.
And these solutions, there'll be even more going over time. It's going to constantly evolve. But I was trying to say to the listeners, the experts out there, hey, please focus on maybe the platform. How do we get that data up onto a common platform so now data analytics can occur? And better decisions, because these solutions in themselves, they're silos in of themselves.
Yeah, that's an issue,
right? And the customer, like yourself, you need to solve a whole range of issues and challenges. And these prop tech guys are saying, "Oh yes, but we can solve this." And then another prop tech company is, "Oh, but we solve that." And
then you need like 15 dashboards in order to manage it all.
Right. So get it up on a common digital twin.
Yeah.
And there you kind of pull in, because if you want to manage energy efficiency in a building, you do want to know occupancy.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
And you do want to know weather conditions.
And you want to know CO2 levels and.
Right. So you're pulling in
quality.
Data sets, from different areas. Then you can make a proper decision.
It'd be interesting to see who provides that common platform.
I'm talking with NEC.
Okay.
Hitachi, Tata Consulting Services, Tech Mahindra. These are two giants from India.
I know Tata.
Indians are
right?
Indians are really good with their programming, right? And that is the common layer. I wish I could talk to a Google or a Microsoft. They're much sexier, but they're that much more difficult to work with.
Yeah,
right?
They have their own set way to do things.
Right. So I'd like to work with maybe a second tier big company that is less well known than the Google and Microsoft, but they're also multi-billion-dollar companies in their own right.
Yeah. Right. Well, Chungha, it's I'm conscious of your time. I think we'll leave it there. Chungha, great to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Yes. So nice to see you again, Gavin.
Not at all. It's good, and I hope you enjoyed your wine. It looks like you're coming to the end of it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Mr. Chungha Cha. Can I suggest you go and look at the show notes for this episode, because there's going to be quite a few links there for the various organizations and companies that Chungha mentioned during the show. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you found this episode useful, please consider sharing it out to any friends or contacts you have who you think you might get some use from it. And if you want to connect with me directly or follow me on social media, my website is gavinjgallagher.com. And if you go /go, that brings you to an initial page where you can sign up to the newsletter as well. And lastly, guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I think you're going to enjoy my YouTube channel, PropTech TV, where I post videos. A lot of the videos are actually coming directly from this podcast. I chop up the videos into small bite-sized kind of information where you can get some great value. So check that out. All right, guys, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you all next Monday.